You're listening to the Thoroughbred podcast, an elite business leadership podcast.
This is near and dear to my heart. Like, this is not bandwagon stuff. This is true, near and dear to my heart. Super excited to welcome Joey Spencer to the Thoroughbred podcast. And, this is an elite business podcast. And at the same time, it's about elite people. And the story isn't just about Joey, it's about his family. And I can tell you that as a testament because, I walked into their home and I had the blessing of selling their home. And I say blessing very raw in this moment because when I walked into your house, and I don't know if your dad has shared this with you, when I walked into your house, you guys were not there. You'd already moved out. I felt like I was in a chapel. And not because there was a cross hanging on the wall. There's a lot of crosses hanging in places. I could feel, there was just an overwhelming feeling of love, of family. And it was just amazing. And so I want to start with that. Tell me about you. Tell me about you as a person and your upbringing and your family background.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that's an accurate description of kind of how we grew up as kids, just with a lot of love and a lot of family. Family was the main probably thing that was in our lives and that we knew to be true, that no matter what was going on, we always had our family around, our closest family. And it wasn't just our immediate family. It was our grandpas. It was our cousins. It was, we were very, very few times was I not with family, very few times. I spent my weekends with my cousins and my grandparents, pretty much all the way from the time that I was a little kid to the time that I was a teenager. And, we always knew that we could depend on each other and that, if we needed support, we needed somebody to have our back, then that was who we went to. And that was a great way to grow up, you know what I mean? Because even if you, no matter what you have, no matter what circumstances you're dealing with, that you've got, a firm support system, and people that really care about you no matter what.
Yeah. And I'll share this with you. One of the reasons I think that always grips me is because I didn't have that. And so when I walk in and I can feel that, it's just a different feeling that I grew up with. My mother committed suicide when I was 6. My dad never recovered really from that mentally until he found the Lord, which was just 5 years ago, I found the Lord 7 years ago. So that journey, that path, I think another thing that's very inspiring for me because of that is that relationship that you have with your father. And that shines through. And so tell us a little bit about that, because I know you love your mom and we'll talk about that and the rest of your family, but with your dad being your trainer, right? Mm-hmm. And I've coached my 18-year-old, it's tough to turn that switch on and off from, hey, now it's time to get busy to now we're family again. So tell me a little bit about that relationship, because that's certainly special.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always been something that we balanced since the time that I was just a little kid, starting to do this. Boxing is also a very different sport to do it in. And I've heard a lot of kind of testimonies about this situation because the father-son coaching teams are usually the best teams, at least in the sport of boxing that I know, because of the passion that's there, and boxing is a very passionate sport and it takes a lot of grit. So there's very few people who can bring that out of you like your father can bring that spirit out of you that he knows best, or it's your father, need someone to really be able to bring you to places that no one else can. So that's what your father can do. But then it's also a very, it's a balancing act, because that's also that drive and that spirit and that, passion of a fight can play into, everyday life when, you go back to just being a teenager, you go back to just being a kid at the time, so it's always an act of trying to do things to counteract that. And sometimes, we failed at that. And sometimes we've done well. And it's just always a learning process for me and him. But it's a great relationship and it's brought us, a lot closer, even though we bicker a lot and we, just think because he's, like a coach is, he's always on me. He's always on me for perfection. He makes me strive for perfection. And in the end, that's what makes me reach my goals. But in the midst of all that, we can forget why we're, what's happening, and that it's a real good thing, and sometimes we can lose sight of that and maybe fight a little bit, but then we always come back together, and it's a great relationship.
Yeah, that's awesome. When you say goals, I'm always triggered into the next thing, because I think goals are great, but I think that you can't achieve a goal without the commitment behind it. And so to me, when everybody talks about goals. Everybody does. Oh, my goal. But what is your commitment level? And I think that is what takes people to the next level, right? Because you've got to have that breakthrough where, hey, this is hard. And when goals are, when we set lofty goals and lofty expectations, our commitment has to be way bigger than our goal. So tell me a little bit about, when as you're coming up, right? And you start to have this vision of, hey, obviously you've been passionate about this from day one, but you start to have this vision of, this goal, this commitment that I'm making. There's I don't want to say light at the end of the tunnel because you always have that in your mind. But when you start to gain traction in it, did you recognize that moment?
Yeah, absolutely. At first, it started out, and it was just about all about boxing. It's kind of like I always, me and my dad, talk about it. I tell certain people ask me what it was like when you started, what the differences were when I started to become more of a professional or even preparing to become a professional, the difference from when I was an amateur fighting in national tournaments. And even though those were big things for me at the time, in my head, it was just all about boxing. It was all about doing what I love to do. I love to box. I love to train, and I love to go to tournaments with my friends. I'd see my friends from all over the country, we went to these tournaments. Then when you start to prepare to turn pro, it becomes a lot more about business, and it becomes a lot more personal and a lot more lonely. It becomes a lot more, you're by yourself. You train by yourself. The training camps are harder. It's a lot more commitment, a lot more sacrifice. I've sacrificed.
That'd be a great time too, though, when you get to that, when, as you said, it's a lot more lonely, but you're still there with your family.
Right, absolutely. So it definitely, that, like I said at the beginning, going back to that, I feel like my whole life's kind of been, even in those times where I feel like, the sacrifice is so much, I still got my family right there. Yeah. You know what I mean? And we moved to California. I left a lot of my close family back in Michigan. That was hard for me. That was hard for my family. But, having my dad, having my mom, having my little brother there, really, really was what made all the difference, but feeling that traction start to pick up in the momentum and feeling people start to get behind me and getting my first professional win, that was when after my first pro win, seeing the support and seeing everybody back home from Linden and everybody just supporting me. And that's really what made me see, my light, at the end of the tunnel. Because for, like everybody who's been in a position where they're striving for something, there's definitely dark times. There's dark times where you feel like, things are harder than, or more hard than good. But it all came together after that. And I could see, a lot of potential that I always knew was there, but I saw a lot of potential.
You experience it a little bit.
Exactly. I got to feel the fruits of my labor. Yeah.
Well, and I think the other part of that, when you said, all the support from home, I think it's important to recognize the impact that has on people, right? And look, there's a lot of people that can become successful, right? I mean, at whatever it is, but I think the foundation that you have to maintain a level head. And I know you got to roll with a little bit of chip on your shoulder in anything you do, especially in boxing. But I think to be able to come back to that family, that foundation, that faith. Tell me a little bit about that faith, because that was the thing that really, when I went into your house, I was just like, I called my wife from there. I'm like, yeah. I was like, man, I got to tell you, honey, I'm at this house and they're in California and I feel like they're here. I feel like the Holy Spirit's here. Like there was just something about it. So tell me about that background, because you can't create that by just hanging a cross on the wall.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what always kept, that was our foundation from the time we were little. My mom and dad always just kept us focused on what was important, That's what it always came down to, is even when it got when it seemed like I was, because you can really have a tendency to have your dreams kind of take over your whole life. Mm-hmm. Everything, that you think about, everything that you're striving for, everything that you want in life can kind of distract you. And that's where people go wrong. That's where people start to, start focusing on the wrong thing. And the difference is I've got my dad and I've got my mom and I've got people around me that keep me focused on this isn't the end goal at the end of the day. I can accomplish everything, but if I forget what it's really for, and if I forget who I'm really doing it for, then it's honestly not worth it. You know what I mean? That's what I always say. What makes this worth it to me is doing what God has for me in this. Because I know there's more than just boxing to this.
Sure. After boxing, there's more.
Absolutely. There's going to be a lot of platform. There's going to be a lot of opportunity. Hopefully a lot more financial, a lot more financial resources to be able to help people across the world. That's what that's always been my main dream. If you talk to my family, if you talk to my dad, that's what always has been my my goal. I want to help people across the world that need it, and not just help them financially or put food in their stomach, but point them towards their Savior and point them towards who's really going to save their souls. So that's what always, that's what really drives me and makes all this worth it to me. When I think about the work, I don't think about, one day I'm going to have so much money. One day I'm going to have so much. No, I think one day this is going to touch way more people than just me. And it's deeper than boxing. I know I'm on this journey for a reason. And so that's kind of what.
That's the beauty of this, doing this with you is we've never really even met, right? I mean, you guys were gone. And so I communicated with your dad a lot and through that, the sale of the house, but I knew that was in you. Just from being in the house and watching you and talking to your dad, and that's super motivating. And I think now more than ever in our world, we need that. And there's people are just lost, and I didn't have any of that foundation growing up, and so it's inspiring to know that it exists, and it's inspiring to know that. And I'm the same as you, right? I've worked very hard. I end up on that I have a little bit of a platform, right, and some means to give back, but I struggle with it a little bit. I will share with you and maybe help you because we don't want to be on that pedestal, but we have to accept it in order to give back. And I struggle with that a little bit. So literally, I started reading a book 2 days ago that a guy from Ohio sent me. And the title slipped to me right now. I just had it, but it'll come back to me. But it really speaks about being able it was Called to Create. That's the name of it, Called to Create. And the first 10 pages impacted me because it just was a reminder that God was a creator. He himself was a creator. And so it's okay to be that creator's mind and to do these things. And I think it's how we do them that matters and understanding who we are. And hey, you're going to get people that, people are going to say, oh, you're on the bandwagon. That's fine. People are going to say, we're doing these things to be in the limelight. No, that just comes with it. And then we have to embrace it, which that's the hard part for me. I don't want to be on a billboard. I really don't. Yeah. Just part of the game, and people see you as that person instead of as who you really are. So, and I think that's what the beauty of this that brings that kind of to life. Tell me a little bit about what started the mind of boxing? Like, was your dad a boxer? I mean, for the audience, just to understand, when I went to their home, right? Now, I've never been there. I don't know these people. I opened the garage door to look in the garage, and it is a boxing ring, a boxing training center. I don't think a car has ever been in this garage. I mean, literally, it was beautiful. I was like, I want to jump in the ring and start boxing, but I figured there were cameras on me. So how did that become?
So my dad was a boxer. He was an amateur boxer, and he actually started in his early 20s. And I was just a little kid, a very young kid. And that's some of my earliest memories. Just my dad was a big boxing fan. Some of my earliest memories were watching big fights with him at a very young age. I was very little kid, and some grown men don't have the attention span to like watch a boxing match. And me, I was a kid that was all over the place. You know, I just wanted to play and run around. And but when boxing came on, that's when I could get focused. I could focus on a boxing match for the 40 minutes that were on, that it was on. I was involved in extremely interested in the build up of the fights, the big fights. And I just loved everything about the sport. I always say, I tell people, and people might not really understand, you know, and think that I'm just saying it, but I truly was born with something in me that just wanted to box. And it wasn't even just wanted to fight. It was that I loved boxing. I loved it.
Very big difference, right?
Yeah, I loved the sport. From a young age, it was like UFC would come on and it was like, oh, it's okay. I loved boxing. You know, I loved the bravado. I loved the athletes, the way that they carried themselves. I loved just everything about it. I loved, you know, two men coming together and having to outthink the other one. I just loved everything about it. So my dad saw that, and, you know, I'd be trying on my dad's boxing equipment when it was big on me, and I'd be trying it on and from a very young age. And then as I got old enough to box, I was probably 6 or 7. We started traveling all over the state, sparring kids my age, little kids, and learning how to box. And some a lot older and some a lot more experienced with already, you know, having amateur fights. My dad was just preparing me because he knew that I loved it. So I always wanted to be a professional boxer from the time that I was that age. You know, there was.
What age was that? What age do you think that was when you first said?
From the time I was 6 or 7, I wanted to be, you know, someone asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I'd say a professional boxer. So we travel around and, you know, go to these different gyms. And then finally I was old enough to have my first fight at 8 years old. I think I had my first fight when I was 9 years old, actually. And never looked back, started winning national championships. And at this time we were just bouncing around gyms and around the state, getting sparring still. Didn't really have our own gym. Actually, if I trained at home, I would train in the basement. I had a basement gym. It was it had a treadmill and a punch and a heavy bag, and I would just train there with my dad. But then we'd go around the state for sparring. And then finally, I was, you know, winning a lot more nationals, and we were thinking about opening up a gym somewhere. And then we said, you know what, let's move the cars out of the garage, and we worked on that gym for, I think, a couple weeks straight in the summer, and that's where I ended up training for for my world championships, my national championships, and I trained in the garage for the last, you know, couple years of my amateur career.
Usually when we sell a home, we have to talk about getting the furniture moved. The biggest move here was getting all the boxing ring out and all of that.
Yeah, that was going to be a struggle.
Tell me about, besides boxing, what else do you enjoy? Is there a secondary passion, or are you just so laser focused on this? I mean, I know there's very little time in a day as it is, right? But do you get down? I know right now in the midst of it, you probably don't have any downtime. But when you have downtime, what do you like to do?
My favorite thing to do after my fights is I love to box. That's really what I do. You know, that's the main thing that I'm focused on as far as a passion, you know, something that, but that's my work also. What I love to do, my downtime is after my fights. I like to come home to Michigan, and I just really like to spend time with my friends. And I've got very close friends in Linden, and I've got a great family, like I said, and I like to just spend time at my grandpa's house, and I like to go fishing with my cousins, and that's the type of stuff that I like to do, you know, and just hang out and watch movies and, you know, maybe go to have bonfires, you know, that's what I like to do in the summertime after I come home, and I just like to relax and just unwind as much as possible.
Awesome. So tell me, at a young age, who was your favorite fighter?
I had a couple. I always loved the fighting style of Floyd Mayweather. That was who I really watched a lot when I was a kid, and I liked Roy Jones Jr. And then I also loved my favorite fighter as a kid. I'd say like my main, like my childhood idol, my boxing idol. There was Andre Ward. He was, you know, a boxing genius, and probably go down as one of the best super middleweights ever, the best super middleweight ever. And I love watching him still to this day. And then Miguel Cotto. He was the Puerto Rican world champion in a few different weight classes, and I just loved his spirit and the way he fought. He had some great wars, and that was the 4 styles that I probably watched the most and put something together on my own And then I love the old fighters. Like, I loved watching the old fights like Ray Leonard and Marvin Hagler. And I loved watching Tommy Hearns, and I love the old fights and even older, because I've always been a boxing kind of historian, and I love watching Joe Lewis's and all the oldest fighters.
You got a chance to meet it. You've had a chance to meet a couple, right?
Yeah, definitely. Andre Ward, he's always been my favorite fighter, so it was the top one. So it was really cool that I actually have been training in his gym for the last 2 years in California. That's why we moved to California, because we met him, trained and sparred in his gym a couple times, and then they invited us to come stay there permanently. So we took that opportunity, and I was able to watch his sparring watch his full camps for the last two fights that he had before he retired. Two of his biggest fights against Sergey Kovalev. And I was at the fights, locker rooms. I got to see everything, the whole layout, everything that he did to prepare at the fight, before the fight, leading up to the final hours before the fight. So it was that was probably the biggest experience for me since I've, been out in California, that truly have, I've taken so much from, and I know will be, a big experience that I draw from in the future, in my career.
So seeing them, prepare, how does Joey Spencer prepare?
I try to prepare similar, I take a lot of things that they did, and it's mainly just about whatever I noticed about Andre. He's laser focused. That's the thing about him. He never lost focus, no matter who he was preparing for, whether it was a less known opponent, kind of a tune-up fight, or whether it was the best fighter in the world.
Right. Not taking anything for granted.
He never took anything lightly, trained the same way, just extreme hunger. You could see it in his eyes, and he never took any shortcuts. He never took any, never cut any corners. That was the thing that I admired about him, especially with me coming up, being the beginning fights of my career, being, a kid, and a lot of kids my age who are fighting, professional, they think it's a game, you know what I mean? They think it's, they can just party and, after their fights and, leading up to their fights, and that, they can do whatever they want and they're above life and things like that. But being around Andre really taught me just to bite down, keep my head down, stay focused, and enjoy. And all the work is done.
It's funny you say that, because my favorite boxer was Mike Tyson, and I always loved boxing. I mean, I loved, I don't know, I love the action of it, and the, the kind of jockeying back and forth, and the strategy behind it, because there is strategy, right? I mean, there's mind, there's a lot of thinking, but I always liked Mike Tyson because of his childhood, I was drawn to that. I wanted to see him succeed, and he was with, Diamato, laser focused. And the success didn't even stop that. It was once he got unfocused, and the initial success didn't get him unfocused. It was after everything went down, and then old boy got involved, and then things started to change. But he had a book, and I read this book, and I don't like to read books. I mean, I know I just told you about another one, but it takes me a month to read a book. But this book was so good. It really dove deep into his childhood and really how crazy it was. And so and that goes back to, you having that foundation that he didn't have, that when you do reach the top, that you can always go back to keep you focused and to keip you dialed in.
Absolutely.
That's really awesome. What does your day look like? If you're, let's just say today, today's Wednesday, your second pro fight is Friday. And so what was your day like today? When do you work out? And kind of the rest is probably just chill and relax.
Yeah, I work out. I'll work out later tonight. I work out around the time that I'll be fighting. So between 8 and 9, I'll go down and I'll do my workout just to wake up my body around the same time that I'll be waking up the day of the fight. So I've been doing that every day because you want to get on a consistent schedule.
How far out do you start with that? Like once the fight's scheduled?
About a week.
Okay, that's interesting. I would have never known that. That's awesome.
Yeah, the times can be all over the place at the beginning. You can't just, working around your schedule, your sleep schedule, things like that. But the last week, you really try and get on a schedule to kind of create some muscle memory. and fight it, be training at the time that you're going to fight. So I'll go down and train. Today's, the day before the weigh-in, so I've started my weight cutting, and I've cut my water off and whatnot. So tonight will just be a light shadow boxing workout, and just to kind of keep the blood flow going and keep my legs, get my legs woken up and things like that. So I'll be tomorrow. So I'll do that workout. I'll go to sleep after that workout, kind of lay in bed, lay around, go to sleep at about 11 o'clock, wake up tomorrow, and it's just get on weight, finish off. I'll take a bath tomorrow, an Epsom salt bath, and do very warm, very hot, like boiling hot, because this is how I get my final weight off. So I'll do that to get my final weight off. It actually just pours out. It's a really good way to do it. But so I'll do like cycles, 20-minute cycle, like 10-minute on, 5 minutes off, 10 minutes back on.
Going in and out of that?
Going in and out of that, yep. And it's pretty brutal, I'll be honest. It's not fun. It's probably my least favorite part of the camp. But when it's over, it happens a lot faster than getting the weight that I get off in that bath. It would take a lot longer of me running and expending energy and, actual physically working out, to get it off. So I got to suffer a little bit, but in the end, it's a lot better for my body.
I saw on the video that you did, I thought you were getting in an ice bath because I played hockey. After hockey, we got an ice bath. So it's pretty crazy to, I'm thinking you're working out, like when we're scheduling this, I'm thinking you're working out in the morning, but no, you're at night. I'm thinking you're in a cold bath and you're getting in hot water with Epsom salt.
Yep, I get it. I do ice baths during camp when my body's a lot more fatigued and whatnot, but right now I'm winded down so much, the work level is way less than when it was the first 7 weeks, and in my last week, it's really just tapering down, letting my body recoup to the point where, it takes from all the training I did the last 7 weeks.
Right.
And then my body will just be, firing the last day, the Friday of the fight.
So it's like a thoroughbred. You do all this training because they usually race every 4 to 6 weeks. So you do all this training in preparation, and the last 5-7 days, it's more of recouping to go real hard. Yeah, that's awesome. Yep. How do you balance that? You're 17 years old, which is, incredibly young. Holy cow. But it's a beautiful thing. How do you balance that, like girlfriend, right? Obviously being focused helps, but are you doing those things? Do you have a girlfriend, or is that again something that is just not even on your mind right now?
No girlfriend right now. It's just like you said, it's just really not. I've got, I've had a girlfriend, the last serious girlfriend I had was we broke up about a year ago, around the time that I moved to California. And right now, just all my focus is on, the fight. I get to see my close friends and family when I go home to Michigan after the fights. That's for about 3 to 4 weeks. That's my time that I kind of just try to be normal, but that's not, enough time to kind of create a relationship.
Right. So after each fight, you go home for a few weeks?
Yes. Last time it was 3 weeks. Yep, last time was 3 weeks. I'll be doing the same thing this time. And I just enjoy that time a lot. I enjoyed it.
Especially after a win.
Especially after a win. Just, totally relaxed and just go home, be myself for a little bit. It's a good time.
Yeah, that's awesome. So tell us about the fight coming up Friday. Who's your opponent? What's his style? And then as we get into that, what is, I call it race day, right? Because of the horses, but what is that mindset the day of the fight? Kind of walk us through that because I'm sure it's probably different than what I thought, because I thought you were in a cold bath.
So my opponent, this is going to be embarrassing, but I do not know his name. He's an African, he's straight from Africa, and he's got a very hard name to pronounce. So I haven't really rehearsed it enough to say it.
You probably got a nickname, but we won't go there.
Yeah, I don't even know his nickname, but so I have watched this film a lot. He's kind of just a straightforward fighter. Throws a lot of straight punches. He's got some long arms. But nothing too advanced. I'll be able to. I'll take the first round and be, and see what he's got. I'll see what he's got, see what I'm working with. Yeah. And then once I find out what I'm working with, that's when it's all over.
Yeah. Well, in your first fight, there was a picture that I saw somewhere on Facebook, and in the picture alone, I said, "Oh, this cat's in trouble." No, for real. You talk about that laser focus, and I could just see it in your eyes. It was like, oh, your focus compared to his, in my opinion, just seeing that photo wasn't the same. And I think that again, that's that commitment, that's that drive, that's that vision that you're. I don't want to say you're looking past him, you're looking through him.
Exactly. Right. It's when I saw that, and this is kind of, I'm getting into that. This is the day before the weigh-in, so I'm getting to that point. It's starting to come, but when I get to this point, it's just something kind of changes in my mindset, and it's when I get to the weigh-in and I saw him, I saw that guy. Like you said, it was just like you kind of see a picture of someone who's trying to stop my momentum, who's trying to stop what I've worked for, and it's just, in the end of the day, he's just doing his job. He's not trying to, but you kind of paint a picture in your head that this is the guy who's trying to stop, my momentum, trying to stop me from taking this where I'm going to take it for my family. And, at that point, something just switches, and it's just like, it gets brutal,
Do you, this is kind of a two-part question. I just thought of this because when I work out, people always wonder what people work out to, right? I work out to Christian music because it calms me. And when I'm calmed, I'm able to focus more. And so what kind of music do you listen to as you're prepping and, getting taped up and kind of going through all of that?
I actually try not to listen to any music. Actually, I try not to listen to any music because I think that it's better for me to, especially before a fight where my emotions are so high as it is, I just like to be, completely clear-minded without any music, without any, you know what I mean? I get wrapped up and just, I'm all in my thoughts. I like to really close my eyes and think about the game plan, relax myself. You know what I mean? I don't like anything to get into my mind that is coming from somebody else who's not really going in to do what I'm going in to do. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I like to just focus on what I'm about to go do. And I always stay more calm that way. But then there is sometimes that I'll turn on some hip hop or I'll turn on something just based on the mood. Sometimes I'll turn on some R&B, some like smooth music to relax me. It just depends on, I can get to the fight and be like, all right, I need this right now because I feel a little bit more uptight than normal. Sometimes if I'm in the right, state of mind already and I'm already relaxed, then I won't turn anything on because I don't want to mess with that. I don't want to get too amped up. I don't want to get too, I just want to be calm.
Yeah. Well, I played goalie in hockey, and so, we're considered a little bit goofy, but you have all of those routines. And for me, it was never about getting hyped up. It was about getting relaxed and getting just kind of, same kind of thing. The players are getting all hyped up and they're yelling and screaming. They want to go out and hit people. And I'm just focused on, being in the moment and trying to slow things down. They're trying to speed things up. I'm trying to slow things down.
Exactly. Slow things down. It's, the worst thing that I can do is go in there too excited. The last fight, it worked out in my favor, but I didn't even remember most of the fight until I watched it after because I was so hyped up.
Yeah.
My adrenaline was crazy and I just went in there just to, I was throwing all power shots. I wasn't, barely using my jab. It was all hooks, big right hands. And this fight, I really want to go out more. Try and relax a little bit more, but it'll definitely come out probably right when I see my opening. But that's the thing. I saw my opening really fast the last fight too, so that's why I just went in as reckless as as not reckless, but as aggressive.
Yeah.
So it just depends all when I see my opening, but it's definitely it's a very fine line of like aggression going in the ring and trying not to cross the line of being too, it's very, very.
If you get out of it, if you go overboard, you're getting out of what you're supposed to be doing, and you're becoming vulnerable, right?
Vulnerability,
yeah.
And that's a very fine line, and it's a very, it's a mix that you kind of gotta work on for days before the fight, It's just like preparing your body, but you got to make sure your mind's right going in there. It doesn't matter how good a shape you're in going into the ring. You've got, if you let your mind slip before you get in there, that can be bad. So you got to make sure your mind's right.
Yeah. So we're talking about getting your mind right, the mindset, right? The mindset from on game day, right? Day of the fight. When do you start to get into that routine? I mean, the fight's at 8:00.
Yeah.
So when do you kind of start to shift that? Does it, like for me, on game day, the whole day was blown. I was laying around the house stretching, really getting prepared. When does that kind of start in the morning? I mean, you wake up, probably have breakfast and do your thing. When do you start to get into that mindset of the fight?
All day today is the day that it really started. Actually, yesterday, last night is when, in my workout, is when I really felt things start to change.
One of the things that I always wonder about people, and I think, again, it goes back to my childhood. What is the toughest thing you've gone through in your life? And what did you learn from it?
The toughest thing that I've gone through in my life, I've never really thought about this before. I've never really thought about this question. I've had some really, I don't think it was one moment, like like something that specifically happened that I look back on and I'm like, wow, like that happened. And this took me to a bad place. You know what I mean? It was more of a moment a time in my life. The hardest time I've probably went through personally in my life was, first of all, people don't really understand what it took when we moved to California, how hard just our everyday life was. The first year that we were in California as a family, like it was the struggle was incredible. It was, we always talk about, we wish we had some of it on camera just so that people could really see, what we did and what we went through and the days that we had. But when I was training for my first the debut here, I had a moment in time where, for some reason, I just couldn't get right mentally. It was just, I don't know if it was the pressure. I don't know if it was the pressure, the training, the lack of people kind of by my side. You know what I mean? It was more, my dad and I were training, so we were at odds, I felt very, alone. The training camp was harder than I'd ever had before. So that already taxes your mind. It taxes, your mindset, and you feel mentally kind of weak. And then also my boxing game was not in the best place. Like it wasn't, coming together the way I wanted it to on an early stage. And for some reason, it just truly took me to a very, very depressed place. It took me to a very, very depressed place. And I'd never been in any situation like that before in my life. But it was probably the hardest. I've told other people that was probably the hardest time in my life, the hardest season in my life. I never experienced anything like that because I'd always felt pretty in control, felt pretty in control of what was going on. And at this point in time, I did not feel in control. I didn't feel sure of myself. I didn't feel confident. This is everything that I had worked for and everything that we had struggled for to get to this point. And I felt like I had no control over it. I felt like I should be extremely motivated. I felt like I should have been extremely, can you hear me, buddy? Or are we frozen up?
You're good, brother.
So I felt like I should have been extremely motivated. And I felt like I should be in the best place in my life. You know what I mean? Training wise, this is my shot. This is my opportunity. For some reason, it just felt like I was under attack. It's hard to even explain. It felt like I had never felt before. It felt like there was something very strong, attacking me on a daily basis, to the point where I felt like just breaking down when I was in the ring. Never felt like that in my life. I've been boxing since I was a little kid. And what I've realized is at a pro level, growing up more and more, is it'll either make you or break you, really, because boxing is a sport that truly it tests every part of you. It tests your mental strength. It tests your physical strength. It just tests everything you are as a man. And it kind of makes you confront yourself.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes you examine yourself. And I feel like that's what I was in. And I don't know if other fighters have had this experience. I'm not sure. I haven't heard many people talk about it. But coming through that really took a lot of prayer. My mom was praying for me every day. It got to the point where they were like, look, Joe, do you want to fight this fight? And this is actually I've never told anybody on this level, this situation, but they were actually asking me if I wanted to fight the fight. And I was like, yeah, I'm not a quitter. I'm going to fight the fight. You know what I mean? Whatever comes of it, comes of it. But finally, I just gave it up to God, and I was just like, I don't know what's going on, but I can't do this by myself, and I thought that I was ready, and I thought that I could do this on my own, but I really couldn't, and I can't, and I really need your help. And, fighting through that, it became a situation where everything started looking up after that. Literally within 3 weeks of the fight, where I should have already been in a good place. But 3 weeks away from the fight, I got to the place where everything, my mind started just really getting sharp. I started really coming together. Everything came together. My boxing came together. My conditioning came together. I felt strong mentally, physically. Had some of the best performances of my life in training and sparring. And then, coming into the fight, I was just in such a strong place. But that little season, it was probably a month period of time that was probably the hardest time in my life. Like you said, you asked what's the worst thing that's ever happened to me. It's not really like the worst thing that's ever happened to me. It's more the hardest time I've ever endured, just a lot of uncertainty, a lot of stress. And I think it might have been because of how hard we worked to get to that point. And when I was confronted with it, it was almost like, are you going to choke? Or are you going to...
Right. Or are you going to perform?
Like, all right, here it is. I got it. It's in my hands now. I can take it or I can break. So that was the situation. And I really had to pull through it. But it made me a lot stronger. And now I can draw from that. You know what I mean? If I have that in the future.
Well, and I, as you're telling me that story, I have the smile on my face because obviously you did, because we're having this conversation, but the smile on my face is because now you've already had that experience. And just like you said, you can draw from that and gain strength from that. And again, in that moment, where did you go back to? Foundation. Right. And, and I always feel like, God doesn't want us to be in control.
Mm-hmm. That's what my dad told me. My dad told me when we were talking about it, because I really didn't know what to do. And I thought, I remember telling my dad, I don't think this is a situation that I go to God for, because I feel like this is just a situation where I need to be stronger. I need to, and he said, God, because I don't want to be the one to just go to God when I need something, and he said, God wants you to need him. God wants you to take your problems to him. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what I learned through that, is that no matter where you're at in life, you can always go to God with your problems, because that's what he wants you to do. You know what I mean? I've had situations since then that instead of waiting so long, if we weren't so stubborn, we wouldn't wait so long. You know what I mean? I waited too long, and it just slowly progressed to the point where I was at rock bottom. Now in training camp, I mean, it gets hard. You know what I mean? And training camp wasn't the only reason that was a hard period of time. There was also some other things going on. But now when things creep up like that, I don't wait. Right. I go to God right away, and it always takes care of things.
That's awesome. I love that. I think that's, it's important to be able to recognize that. And I mean, he wants our burdens, and I carried those for so long until I met God, and it was just like, I went to this men's retreat at St. John's here in Fenton, and I mean, I cried for 2 days straight. And to release that and to release those burdens and then find forgiveness, oh man, I tell you what, just an amazing thing. And so I'm just very proud of you and of your family for having that foundation. Tell us a little before we go, because I don't want to lean on your dad out so much. Tell us a little bit about your mom and your little brother.
My mom is the one who helps me through all this whole situation. You know what I mean? She, in training camp, she's got a very, very hard job, because she is constantly, she's doing so much all the time. She does anything and everything that I need, and tries to make things as easy as possible for me, as my dad does, but she's my dad's helper. So my dad puts, a lot on her, and she always takes it with a good attitude. So, I couldn't be more thankful to her. And then also just being, great mom to us and taking care of her boys, and also my sister, for as long as I can remember. And then my little brother, he's a stinker. but
imagine that.
But he really, there's no one that I like having around more than him. You know what I mean? I'm very, very glad of all the people, especially like I said, being in California the last couple of years, having lonely times. Well, Kel always, me and him have really come a lot closer in that time because we've both been away from our friends, both have been away. So our bond as brothers has really come a lot farther. I'm happy and proud to say that, we've gotten, very, very close in the last couple of years. And so no matter where I'm at, I always make sure he's with me. You know what I mean? There's not a fight that I'll have that he's not with me, or an event, or, I like when I go home for him to be with me, and, because we really have each other's backs no matter what. So
awesome. Well, brother, I'm very proud of you. I'm happy to have you on. I'm happy to be a supporter of you and your family and all of the things that you're going to do. I said to your dad the other day in a text, I said, there's so much more to this than, this is the platform, right? But as you said, there's so much more to this. And, just being mindful of the impact that you are having and are going to continue to have on a lot of people. And I think it's a beautiful thing. I wish you the very best on Friday night, and we're going to be tuned in. Fox News, 8 p.m., right? Awesome.
It'll be Fox Sports 1.
Fox Sports 1, and we'll get this up for the listeners prior to that, and just try to get as many people supporting you as possible. And brother, I just God bless you, man. I love you. I love your family. You guys are wonderful.
Thank you so much for the support, man. Thank you.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And again, the support is just, being part of that family. I mean, really, it's amazing. Yeah. And so, guys, for our listeners, check out Joey Spencer. What's your Facebook if they want to follow you on Facebook?
Oh, just Joey Spencer. Yep. And then also I'm on Instagram at Joey D. Spencer. So if you guys want to go check that out, and see updates all the time. There's a lot on Instagram. There's a lot on Facebook. So thank you guys.
Definitely check that out. Guys, for us, Thoroughbred Podcast, subscribe on iTunes, follow us on SoundCloud. Definitely thank you so much for listening in. And again, I just want to give big props to this wonderful young man that, we're blessed to have in our presence and in our community. And of course, he's getting a lot of support from around our community. I think it's wonderful. And I know there's big things in store for you.
Thank you so much, man. Appreciate everybody in the community who support me. And thanks for having me on, man.
You got it, brother. Best of luck. Go get him Friday. Wait, what's the stance?
Yeah, there you go.
Why does every boxer have that?
I don't do it. I don't do that.
Keep being you, brother.
All right, thank you, bro.
All right, love you, man. Peace.
All right, love you too, man. See you later. Appreciate it.